Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another episode of Real Talk with Shan and Bilal. My name is Bilal. Sean, what is your name?
My name is, I think, Sean. I'm not
He's
sure.
pretty sure it's Sean. And today, what we are going to be talking about, well, we now actually have two topics to talk about. First part, we're going to be talking about the entire budget mess, which, it looks like we've gone through already like 3 times this year. And then after that, if we have time, if there's enough substance to talk about, we're going to be talking about the cabinet, specifically Mick Mulvaney being appointed acting chief of staff. Now, there's some nuance there regarding whether he's actually chief of staff, whether he's acting. There's some confusion there. But we're going to be starting off with the wall, basically, because that is the main point of contention regarding whether or not the budget will be passing. Now, I heard Ted Cruz, and I saw a news article about this. I think Ted Cruz was proposing that the money seized from El Chapo, I think approximately $14 billion, should be used to fund the wall. Now, he made this claim, I think, online when he was live, not online, excuse me, live, during a news interview. And it seems like the entire Republican caucus, at least within the Senate, is really trying to back this. However, as with any Senate bill, or as with any budget bill, even though it's going to be introduced by the House, it needs to be approved by the Senate. It's a continuing resolution, but it's still subject to this 2/3 cloture vote, right?
Yeah.
That's why the entire thing's a mess. Now, this is going to be the last time Republicans, probably for the rest of the Trump administration, are able to introduce a budget, because now the Democrats have control of the House of Representatives, so they have the ability to introduce the budget as they want. Now, the entire thing is going to be regarding negotiating, and if you guys saw it last week, there's the entire, White House, or actually just back and forth in the Oval Office between anticipated Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and then the President, where they're just going back and forth at it. And once again, as was mentioned there, and as I've mentioned, the main thing is going to be whether or not they can get funding for the wall. So I'm going to pass it off to Sean in a second, but I think the main thing here is there's not going to be funding for the wall, because earlier in the same year, the main point was DACA. Whether or not he would be funding the program and how that would play into the wall. Now, he didn't get the funding for the wall then. I don't think he's going to be getting funding for the wall now. I feel like the wall is just going to be the one thing that escapes the Trump administration, especially now, because the Democratic House would never introduce that. They would just they would just let the entire, budget process fail until Trump concedes.
I mean, like you said, I don't think that the Democrats are going to be able to, have a stronghold of their base if they can somehow come up with a deal with the Republicans that allows for a wall. I mean, because they've been campaigning against Trump, and a large part of why Trump won is because he promised this border wall on the southern border of the United States that would be financed by the Mexican government, as well as the fact that it would keep illegal immigrants out and, all of that stuff. But at this point, I guess if you would argue in favor of Republicans, it's a winning issue in terms of illegal immigration, just in terms of Trump's rhetoric. Because of the fact that Trump regularly says that if the Democrats don't come to a deal about the border wall, then they don't care about the safety and security of American citizens, especially resonating with people living in the South, whether it be in the Southeast or Southwest.
Actually, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just in general. In that sense, it is a winning issue with Trump supporters that more solidifies his base. Now, on the flip side of that, we already have, on many parts of the southern border, we already have walls that, to a certain extent, the appropriations bill that was passed in a bipartisan Senate compromise earlier in the year, it finances the reconstruction of some of those walls and, buffing up security in those areas because of the fact that we already have a significant, showing there, just not only by Border Patrol agents, but by, there being a wall there.
So my thing with that was, it's not fulfilling the core of the promise of what Trump was trying to say. Yeah. Expanding border protection, right, is something that was done by the Clinton administration. I'm talking about, literal infrastructure there, right? Yeah. That was enforced by Clinton, and that was enforced by George Bush. Obama didn't really touch he wasn't known for his border policies. Yeah. But when Bush was there, he wasn't saying we got to build an entire wall. He's like, have some sort of reasonable reasonable barrier there that's not, wasting billions upon billions of dollars.
I mean, to be fair though, when Obama was a senator under George Bush, him and Senator Hillary Clinton also back then voted, I believe it was a bill that would build a border wall around a part of Texas that would basically separate parts of Mexico and parts of the U.S. in a contended area. But the bad thing about it is the wall would go through several bodies of water, several offshore properties of people living in both the United States and Mexico, and thus you have people like whose golf courses now have a wall running in between it, and they're suing the U.S. government, which is like litigation that's still continuing to this day. So it's a very murky territory. You can't just say build a wall and it's done because, it's just a piece of land and you just gotta, build a wall across it.
Well, I would say the reason that, Senator Clinton, or when they were Senator Clinton and Senator Obama would be backing that was because that's something like reasonable. That's something like that feasible. Like when you have a property of land that's crossing the border, you need to have some sort of difference between, this is the United States and this is not the United States.
Yeah.
Not
yet. The problem with that is how feasible is a wall in that regard, as opposed to having border patrol agents or significant measures in order to beef up security in those areas. In other manners.
How feasible is it to have a wall across the entire U.S. southern border? I don't think
it's not. It's I know. That's the point I'm making. And that's the point I've always contended, and it's something that really pisses off a lot of people that I know in conservative circles when you say, "Oh, the wall is probably not going to work," considering the fact that how are you going to finance it? That's the first thing. Mexico's not going to pay for it. You can't have like reparations. What is it called when people in like Mexican expats in the United States send back money to their families? Like Trump said, we would intercept those funds.
I get what you mean, like a Western Union-esque system.
Yeah,
that's sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's not feasible. Yeah. That would have been struck down probably as unconstitutional. I would say.
What having people in? Okay, wait. So illegal citizens in the United States sending money back to?
I don't think it was just illegal. I think it was just Mexican expats in general. If it was illegal immigrants, I don't think that's unconstitutional because they're here illegally.
If they're U.S. citizens sending money back to here, once again, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but if I were to look at it under the scope of the 14th Amendment, right?
Yeah.
If you're a U.S. citizen and you're sending money back to someone that's not within the U.S., I feel like there would have been a 14th Amendment case brought against Western Union by a Republican state, saying that you can't do this, you can't be sending U.S. money ashore. So that would probably, I don't think it would be unconstitutional, or it would be constitutional as is. I don't think it would be illegal if it was sent to a state like Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras. But if you were sending money, let's say, to Iran, like if you're an Iranian here and then you're trying to do that, first of all, I'm not even sure if you can do that. But if you had somehow funneled it there, that would probably be illegal.
Okay.
Just because,
that makes sense,
yeah.
So I was reading an article in the Washington Post that basically, kind of runs across this entire issue. So it's President Trump on Tuesday retreated from his demand for $5 billion to build a border wall as congressional Republicans maneuver to avoid a partial government shutdown before funding expires at the end of this Friday, I believe it is.
It's a continuing resolution, so the money they'd have isn't even that much. Well, here's my thing with the continuing resolution, right? I feel like Congress should be forced to pass a budget. It shouldn't be a continuing resolution because when you do have the only good side about a government shutdown, right, is that it makes people mad against both of the parties. That's the only reason that I think government shutdowns are somewhat effective in achieving their goal of creating a budget. If you just have continuing resolutions, you're ignoring, the big problems with the United States, and that potentially could have, repercussions on the image that we have.
You're basically setting aside the issue for later.
You just keep setting aside the issue. Like, for example, DACA was a big issue. We've barely dealt with DACA. We don't know what's going to be happening with the border wall. Different points of contention, like the way that they were trying to. If a part of the budget dealt with Obamacare, for example, right? Then how does that work in terms of the constitutionality, especially now that a Texas judge or a district judge, right? Federal judge, but he was in the district.
Yeah, federal district judge from Texas.
There we go. Look at that.
He basically ruled the individual mandate clause in the Affordable Care Act unconstitutional.
Okay, wait, before, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but the reason that he ruled it unconstitutional was this. In the Obamacare, right, you have to have health care under the individual mandate, and if you don't, you have a fine, right? Mm-hmm. But now the individual mandate cost is $0.
Yeah.
So you can, if you say that you're under the individual mandate, you have to fulfill it up to $0. But if you're not, you have to pay a fine. That was deemed unconstitutional.
Yeah, exactly, because of the fact that it was basically a tax mandated upon the American people via executive. No,
it was a tax that was not being evenly distributed. tax. It was a tax that was not being equally, instigated against different people.
Right. It was basically kind of
a super big loophole.
Right, like a movement of wealth from healthy to sick people.
Yeah.
In a sense, what you can say. Well, that's one of the main contentions because of the fact that healthy people would have to pay this individual mandate even though they wouldn't need it in the long run, whereas really to finance overly sick people. In a sense,
if we're talking about
or at least to make the price affordable in the market.
No, in terms of the cost of the market, that wasn't what was being concerned. It was you have people that can exploit this loophole, right? Which Republicans had made through their budget, right?
Okay.
Which was you can pay $0 if you're part of the individual mandate, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not part of the individual mandate or not fulfilling that, then you're having to pay a fine. So it's that unequal treatment of people. Some people, if both people had to pay money into the system, it would not have been. It would just be deemed as another tax.
Right.
But you can have people that exploit this loophole, $0. And then you have people that are actually paying the fines. That's deemed unconstitutional because it's a violation of equal protections. That's a big tangent anyway.
That makes sense. But there's no formal injunctions against the ACA in general. It's just that one provision in it.
Yeah, but the Texas judge ruled that the entire Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional because that was so central to it. Like the Affordable Care Act basically doesn't work if you don't have an individual mandate.
Yeah, basically.
That's why healthcare payments, if we keep the current,
Otherwise, premiums are going to skyrocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Even more than they are right now.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, my parents always are complaining about healthcare. I'm like, I'm sorry. Okay, wait. Going back to how that dealt with the budget. Let's say that there's a big debate, which obviously there is, regarding the Affordable Care Act. If they're not able to, deal with it properly, then all the continuing resolutions are going to do is just kick the bucket. It leaves entire industries in doubt. It leaves the stock market kind of wary of what's going to be happening. And at the end of the day, it's just showing how indecisive and how Congress is failing to take any meaningful action. Now, I think that...
Yeah, and you actually... before you get onto that one point, you were talking about the stock market. And the stock market, we can get into tariffs and all that kind of stuff.
Really quick, I think we're kind of like... The budget thing was kind of a simple issue. Do you just want to move on to the stock market now? I'm fine.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We're kind of going off of a stream of
you guys know how we go, right? We say we're going to be dealing with 2 topics. We cover like 50 by the end.
Yeah.
Okay, take it away, Sean.
But that's how it goes. And that's the great thing about podcasts. Anyway.
Wavy.
Anyway, yeah. So, speaking of the stock market, not doing well. And there's a lot of different factors to that. There's uncertainty over House appropriations bills. There's uncertainty over the market as to whether or not it was artificially inflated when companies were basically buying up all the raw materials they could, especially in aluminum and steel before the tariffs hit, as promised by President Trump. So basically, the Dow and S&P, this is from a CNN article, by the way. The Dow and S&P 500 were each down by about 7.8% through Monday, and that's the largest drop for each key market barometer since 1931, which is, if you can recall, the time of the Great Depression.
Oh, I recalled 1931 like the back of my... I'm messing with you.
I was a young college kid. Still.
Oh, a super senior.
Super senior, yeah.
Keep on.
According to data from LPL Research, but those Depression-era losses were much bigger. The S&P plunged 14.5%, while the Dow plunged 17%. Either way, it's not good showing considering the fact that this is the lowest it's been since the time when the country was literally about to plunge into, its own debt.
This wasn't even that. This was in the midst of the Great Depression. If you want to do it by percentages, the top 3 were all during 2008. In terms of percent changes, because I think that's far more meaningful than just points.
Yeah.
Just from an economic perspective, if that'll make sense. Okay.
Even though trade volume and even though large scale sales might be a lot because of the fact that the holiday season is now kicking into 3rd gear, but still, with those, what am I going to say? Predictions, it's still going to be a pretty large and heavy losses for Wall Street firms. So it's not looking to be a good outlook for the rest of the year. 2017 was a huge increase in stock market gains, and then 2018 has been the exact opposite. And a lot of that has to do with President Trump not being able to keep his mouth shut. When you have a good economy, you don't institute tariffs in such a risky manner as to basically put the entire U.S. economy in jeopardy by trying to play war games with China.
I don't get the entire... Okay, the entire thing with the tariffs is something that... Look, when it comes to international relations, right, I would consider myself a liberal, okay?
Okay.
But when it comes to economic policies, I'm a realist. I understand that, you want to keep American jobs at home. You want to make sure that America's the dominant power. You're focusing more on relative gains rather than absolute gains. I get that, right?
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Okay.
At the same time, though, you're damaging U.S. credibility, you're damaging the U.S. economy, and you're damaging U.S. power when you're going against one of our main trading allies.
Yeah.
And
it's basically a show of macho-ness.
Yeah.
To just suggest that, China's economy is going to crash. Like, China's economy needs the U.S. economy more than the U.S. economy needs the Chinese economy, which to a certain extent is true. That doesn't mean that our economy isn't going to be vastly affected by a Chinese recession. There have been many, and it's been a cyclical kind of boom-bust process in the Chinese economy since really 2002, when their economy skyrocketed as a result of technological innovation and grabbing a huge share of the manufacturing market. But ever since then, they've been pretty stable, really, for the past 5 to 6 years. And if that goes down the drain, especially due to trade conflicts, then it's really going to negatively impact the U.S. economy. And I'll go off of that, from personal opinion. So I don't know if I told you about this, but since I'm part of the South Brunswick Arts Commission, we're actually planning to construct an art center, which is going to be an expansion of the South Brunswick Public Library, and we are planning to begin construction by 2019. It's going to take a couple $1 million to build. However, the price has been the cost of construction has been inflated almost by, I think it was about 15% from what I remember.
Because of the steel tariffs.
Because of the steel tariffs.
Yeah.
So it's really killing business, and this is the one thing. If it wasn't for the tariffs, we probably could have gone through with this thing. The city council would have approved it pretty much instantaneously. But the fact that we're running pretty low on the city council funds in terms of this specific demand, and that 15% can really turned out to be killer. Yeah. So it's really killing business.
No, Mayor Carley is a great guy, but he understands costs and stuff. So whenever you're talking about him, that's always something that you negotiate.
Yeah. And before that, who was the guy that passed away?
It was Gambatiste and Kilmurray. Then now it's
Kilmurray. Kilmurray was
yeah.
the one who approved it, but then said, you have to come up with the sufficient funds, and these tariffs really didn't help our case.
I mean, Kilmurray, he was. The entire town, South Brunswick is kind of broke. I mean, we have a really good board of head, and they're really good with that. But we focus a lot. We don't focus as much on the social areas as much as we could, because we're really just used for housing.
Yeah.
It's kind of just where people use it as a hub to go to places like. Immigrants. There's a lot of immigrants, people that work in New York, Philly. South Asians. Yeah, our parents are coming. Yeah. But anyway, where were we talking about? Steel tariffs, right?
Steel tariffs.
Okay, there we go. First of all, I love how this podcast we just bounce all around.
Yeah, pretty much.
Talking about the steel tariffs, what I would do, right, is have you need to rebuild infrastructure in the United States if you really want to have a good economy. Make there be an easier transportation of goods. There's certain areas, right, especially in the Rust Belt, which are just completely cut off because they were used mainly as industrial centers. So if you want to revitalize those, once again, I say this every time, but I'm not an economics expert. Well, when I talked about this with Professor Homan, who's my teacher for microeconomics and will be the financial system, basically, it's a course I'm taking next semester about the overall macroeconomic trends of the U.S., right? What he was talking about was you could totally spend a ton of money going into the Rust Belt, the Mideast, or the Midwest, not the Mideast, the Midwest.
Yeah.
And rebuilding that infrastructure that would genuinely help the American economy. When you have such a large portion of the construction sector, I guess you could say, the labor sector of the U.S. market that just collapses because you're not putting in money, you need to revitalize that. And once again, it's a huge untapped potential. It was tapped originally, then we lost it. We need to find some way to reinvigorate that. That could be done by using the money that we're... Sorry, not by using the money that we're making, by using cheap steel and using, the available labor to build up something. Even if it's not necessarily completely meaningful, just building highways, remaking the highways, just having federal funding for that would revitalize it. Now, going all the way back to FDR, I'm not sure if that would be unconstitutional because it's an entire states' rights issue, disband the federal government. That's an entire other thing. Mm-hmm. But, if Donald Trump, he really wants to bring back jobs, that would be it. And it's funny because I'm surprised he hasn't thought about that, because that would be like the best way. Just make sure that you get back Ohio, make sure that you get back Iowa, and make sure that you get back Michigan and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Or at least Pennsylvania.
Basically.
What else is there to talk about?
I mean, yeah, you took a more political turn about it. And another thing that may result in this is the Federal Reserve is also planning to widely to raise interest rates for the 4th time this year. And it's really another reason why the Trump has really charged up his rhetoric against the Fed.
Dude, Alan Greenspan today, Alan
Greenspan said run for cover.
Yeah, he was freaking out. What was it?
Investors.
I'm going to try and pull up an article. Okay, here we go. He said that
this is the guy that was the Fed chair under, I believe, Reagan?
No, it wasn't Alan Greenspan one of the main guys. Yeah, under Reagan, but he was one of the main guys right before the financial collapse.
Yeah. For Bush and Clinton and then Bush again.
No. It was continuous, 87 to 2006.
And then after 2006 was Bernanke, right.
Yeah. It was, okay, who was it? It was...
Yeah, Volcker, him, Bernanke. And now it's...
Volcker, Greenspan, Bernanke, and now...
Yellen, and then Powell, or whatever.
Jerome Powell. So, Jerome Powell... Jerome Powell is just interesting. First of all, he's the first, I believe, not to have a graduate degree in economics or finance. He has a law degree. But, okay, so what does Alan Greenspan... Just looking at, Powell as a person, he went to Stern School of Business, okay. So then let's go to the next one, Bernanke. And then after we go through this, we'll go to this. But this should sort of inform you. Yeah, he got his master's and a PhD from MIT. And now looking at Yale, we all know Yellen's flex. Brown, Yale, master's in economics. Yeah, she was a lecturer for economics.
Yeah. And just to show you how significant Greenspan's comments to investors to run for cover during this economy are, Greenspan is the same guy who basically instituted the... supply-side economics during the Reagan era. He's the same guy that really said that if you can increase the supply while not affecting demand, as a Keynesian policy would do, then you can lower the prices and maximize the quantity at an optimum cost for public consumption in the marketplace. So, and that's really known as trickle-down economics. I freaking hate that term because, no one really proposed, hey, look, wealth will trickle down from the top to the bottom. It's so misused. I just don't understand.
I'm almost positive I could find a soundbite of Reagan saying, it will trickle down.
Yeah, right. That is wrong economics, because that's really, the policy was supply side, and tax cuts was a part of that. We learned in macroeconomics, tax cuts would result in an increase in supply, especially from the side of suppliers in the economy. However, if you say trickle down in and of itself, that basically implies that, we're just going to help the people at the top and we're going to trust them to help the people at the bottom. That's more of a moral system thing. It really didn't work.
That doesn't work. When you try to put morals into economics, you have to realize this is just not going to work.
Yeah. At that point, it's about preserving the social fabric of our country, but that's a completely different topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that just shows this is the guy that instituted the policy that a lot of people on the left have been calling out Republicans for, trickle down. In my opinion, wrongly, but he's basically the person that instituted that policy, and now he's saying this is the kind of economy that we have to be afraid of. It's everything he's been against. He's been pro-free trade, and Trump happens to be someone who is, I wouldn't say anti-free trade, but very, very pro-tariffs, and very, very pro kind of showing his might on the global stage. I really hate that tendency.
The entire Republican Party's economic policy has completely switched in the last 20 years. And just economic policies in general, which is making it harder and harder to track the progression of each political party. Each political party is becoming more about emotion rather than it's actually about policy. For example, Clinton didn't pass NAFTA with Democratic votes. He had to get Republicans on his side for that.
Yeah.
And that's because he was a third way. And then a couple years... And so that's inherently free trade and pro-economic globalization. Now that's the Democratic platform, and what's the Republican platform? Protectionism.
Honestly, I don't think it's the Democratic platform yet, because they haven't jumped on that I would say bandwagon it. They could very easily make themselves the party of free trade. And I've heard this on many podcasts. I've heard many people say this on the right. This is one hubris of the Republican Party because you have a leader like Donald Trump who is so immune to making impulsive decisions when it comes to the economy, in just touting tariffs every available opportunity he has, because he knows he at least had a good economy to fall back on if it backfires, which he thought it would backfire a little bit, and now it's backfiring big time.
Yeah.
The Democrats could very easily seize upon that opportunity to become the party of free trade and economic globalization while also protecting American workers. But instead of doing that, they're just attacking Trump because, like you said before, both parties have become about emotion than about actual substantive policy. And you don't have enough people on the left really talking about economic policy as much as they should. I mean, for all the disagreements I may have with people on the left, Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, all these people are people that are actually talking about the economy amongst other issues. They're not talking about what Trump did or what Trump ate for breakfast yesterday. Which I hate that tendency from the left.
Like
they're shooting themselves in the foot and they don't even realize it.
It's good during the election season.
Yeah.
But
You can't
this
do
is
that.
off season now. You need to get down to policy, and
Right.
that's what's good. Building up solid policy, consistent policy, efficient policy,
Yeah.
is stuff that builds up those people that you know are going to show up.
Exactly.
So then it's harder, it's easier to get elections like the one that we had in 2018. You don't need to campaign as
Right.
hard, and when you do campaign as hard as you do in 2018, you don't just make a blue wave. You wipe out Republicans.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So then we've covered a lot. Actually, we've covered the cabinet. No, we haven't covered the cabinet.
Yeah, we have to get to the cabinet. We covered the wall, we covered the economy, we covered the stock market.
We covered the budget. That's what I was thinking.
And the budget, yeah.
So now you want to talk about your boy Mulvaney?
Mick Mulvaney, what
I
an
love-
absolute legend. The
Okay.
chief of staff, current in
If I'm
acting
not
capacity.
mistaken, Mulvaney, I think, is the cabinet or is the chief of staff technically part of the cabinet?
I think so.
Just look up cabinet and then see if it falls under because the chief of staff
He's a political appointee of the president who does not require Senate confirmation and who serves at the pleasure of the president. It is not a legally required role, but every president since Truman has appointed one. So he's basically the president's private secretary.
Makes sense. Actually,
So it's more of a personal convenience thing for the president. It's not really.
oh no, dude, but the chief of staff's importance can't be underestimated.
Yeah,
But
it's more of a common law type thing. It's not something that's de jure written.
It's not like a secretary of state where you need a secretary of state. It's something that you could have. One of the things that I heard early on was that Trump might just not appoint a new chief of staff because he's known for just doing his own thing, vibing with himself. If he just didn't appoint a chief of staff, it could totally fall under line. He's like, I'm able to do this. Why waste money on this person?
And I wouldn't blame him. Everyone that he's touting is basically just running for cover. You have Nick Ayers, who even before he was touted, but he was widely speculated to be John Kelly's successor.
I think the worst one was Chris Christie
Christie,
said, just don't consider me at all.
Not even just for chief of staff, any role, any active role in the Trump administration, don't consider.
Which must be incredibly embarrassing for a president.
At that point, Trump has to realize that if no one wants to be a part of his administration, it's better instead of just getting significantly politically weakened by those kinds of decisions. Just say, you know what, I don't even need these guys. Just from a political standpoint.
He's becoming, for people that are entering the administration, he's becoming a toxic president. You lose more, joining his administration than you would, with another Obama. Obama's chief of staff went on to be, Obama's chief of staff went on to be the mayor of Chicago.
Rahm Emanuel, yeah.
Reince Priebus is out of the job. Apparently, people that are leaving the Trump administration have actually ruined their reputation, or have at least lowered their reputation.
People are really down. John Kelly was an army general, I think, general or lieutenant.
He was a high-ranking,
very high-ranking army official, and then he joined the Trump administration. His credibility has really been shot to hell, whether or not you like it or not, and he's gone. Whereas you have Obama, in the sense that he was a groundbreaking president from a social and political standpoint, that if you're a part of that administration, you're essentially a part of history, whether or not you disagree with his policies, which I happen to disagree with some of his policies, but in terms of marketing kind of the White House, you have to say that Obama did a much better job because he wasn't nearly as toxic as Trump.
He was a general. He was a general,
right?
Yeah. Commanded the United States Southern Command, 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, Multinational Force West.
Yeah, some of the battles he was a part of were the 1992 Persian Gulf War, the LA riots in '92, the Iraq War, and Operation Desert Storm, which is basically also part.
Why is it when it says battles and wars, they have put the 1992 Los Angeles?
Yeah, I don't know
riots?
why. Yeah.
I feel like he's just rolling a tank down LA, dude. He's like, "Hey, everyone, get in line."
Right, that really doesn't fit.
That really doesn't fit. Wow, we had one of those breaks where it just went silent for a second.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What was Mick Mulvaney's previous?
He was the head of the Office of Budget Management.
Yeah,
Yes,
Director of Office of Management and Budget, and thus he was de facto the acting director of the CFPB, which is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, started by Senator Elizabeth Warren after the 2008 financial crisis.
Oh, isn't that great? We have someone that undoing the things we did to protect us from another financial crisis. All of these should be non-partisan. I feel like as soon as you enter this, you should give a party affiliation. Because there's certain positions that are super important. Like, if you're, for example, if you're running to be, this is kind of really broad, but there's certain positions like those, right, that office and budget and management and budget, those should be nonpartisan because if you have political leanings, that could destabilize the entire thing. Yeah. So some positions, that one, and I would say, what would it be? The state, the words are escaping me. The secretaries of state for different states that are in charge of elections. I do not want someone with a party affiliation running an election. That's just, inherently flawed. Yeah. Yeah, I think that just about covers it. Unless there's something else on the top of your mind that you want to talk about, I think that's good.
Like in terms of this Mulvaney episode, there's a lot. There's just it's just indicative of a lot of cowbell going on in the Trump administration, and it's really worrying considering the fact that this has been something that's continued on since he was elected, which is something that really undercuts some of his perceived successes from a conservative standpoint. You could say the economy in 2017, even though there was a high turnover rate in his administration in 2017, and the fact that he can't really get his act together, the fact that he always feels the need to tout his this kind of macho-ness, this attitude that, I am the final say in absolutely everything, is really going to be his downfall, and so far it's proven to be it.
Well, first of all, really quickly, on the topic of Mick Mulvaney, I just feel like Donald, or the entire cabinet, not Mick Mulvaney specifically, but the entire cabinet. One of our first episodes was dealing about how unstable the entire Trump cabinet was. If you remember, I'm not sure how many of you have been listening to that one, but getting us up to speed was focused. One of the 4 episodes of getting us up to speed was looking specifically at how messed up the cabinet was, and he hasn't recovered. He has 2 positions of the cabinet that are quote-unquote acting. He has an acting chief of staff, and he has an acting he has an acting attorney general, and on top of that, the Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zink, just resigned.
Wait, he's already resigned?
I'm pretty sure.
I know he was announcing it. I didn't know if he did already. Yeah. So wait, he was the Secretary of
the Interior.
The Interior.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Is an American who served as the 52nd. So now, I think right now there's just no Secretary of the Interior.
Oh, amazing.
Which is kind of crazy, but it's fine. It's fine. The Deputy Secretary of the Interior, who I think right now is acting. What? Okay, that's another thing. But really quick, I think this was announced today. The Trump Foundation is dissolving.
Yeah. It's a charity, right?
It's a personal foundation. Apparently, one of the smallest donations that they gave, I think, was $7 to the Boy Scouts of America. Do you know why it was $7?
Why?
That's the minimum amount you need to donate to the Boy Scouts to have someone registered as part of the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They did that to make it to that Donald Trump, their youngest child, Melania and Donald Trump's youngest child, would be able to be part of the Boy Scouts.
So it got dissolved amid an ongoing lawsuit by the Lower Manhattan District of New York, the AG's office in New York. I think that's the lawsuit, the Trump administration versus.
It's a state lawsuit, right?
Yeah, it's a state lawsuit, and I think an outcome of that is the dissolving of the Trump Foundation.
Yeah.
And they were basically in violation. Him, as well as his 3 eldest children, Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka, were in violation of campaign finance laws.
Does Tiffany get involved in anything?
No.
I've never seen Tiffany's name on one of these documents. It's ridiculous. Okay, but keep going.
Yeah, I mean, all I know that she did in the past year was basically send an Instagram wish to Trump, wishing him a happy birthday. That's all I know. And even then, the picture was like so distant. I forgot, but it was like they were standing literally barely 1 meter of each other. So yeah, that was good. Rather than this is on a CNN article, so rather than operating it as a genuine charity, the lawsuit alleges they instead allowed it to be as little more than a checkbook to serve Mr. Trump's businesses and political interests. Now, this is something that he was accused of even while he was running for president. He was accused of donating to charities in order to get tax-exempt status, which, I mean, all corporations do, but he was also funneling some of that money back into slush funds for potential cases, like hush money agreements with Stormy Daniels and that other porn star that I really can't remember, but basically those kinds of people. So he did some really, really shady stuff. And plus, I think he also, some of that money, I think one of the more comical cases of this was that he used some of that money in his slush fund that he got back from his charitable donations. Well, he used that to buy a painting in like 2014 or something like that, and it was a super expensive painting that didn't even hang up or anything. He just bought it because he felt like it.
I honestly,
this was all with the baggage. Like, people already knew about this about him,
it's
but it's just like, hey guys, but the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, right. He's like, oh my god. Okay.
Well, they did sell arms to like warlords in Africa, but like that's a whole other thing.
It did be like that sometimes. It did be like that.
That's not great, but this is what's happening in the present, and Hillary's not president for good reason. But, basically Trump is
tossing that in at the end of the episode. I love it. just skirting that in.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Okay.
Had to say it.
I got nothing left to say. You wanna close us out, Sean?
Yeah, so we covered topics ranging from the border wall funding to the stock market to the acting chief of staff Mick Mulvaney and the cabinet in general. We talked about budget resolutions, like economics in general. We covered a lot in this episode, and so thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Real Talk with Shan and Bilal. And until next time, have a great evening.